Councillor Quacks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Much of what I was going to address has been already addressed by Councillor Lee, who's now left, in terms of the view of Rangitoto from St Heliers Bay Road. And I guess what I want to draw people's attention to as much as, and I suspect everybody has seen or has been down this road at some stage, but I think it's useful to remember that this, or to draw your attention to the fact that this photo really doesn't do that particular manga or justice, or the view is not done justice by this photo. And that's just because it's photo and it's hard to do. If you actually drive down that road, Rangitoto becomes a very, very dominant feature of that view as you drive down. In fact, it's probably one of the most dramatic views that you could have of Rangitoto. So, in my view, it should be considered to be a regional significant view shaft rather than just a locally significant view shaft, just because of the dramatic effect of it. But also, I suspect that a lot of people who do want to look at Auckland, and tourists and visitors who do want to look at what Auckland has to offer in terms of our unique volcanic field, will be driving along this road to drive along the foreshore. So I would like to see that remain as a regional rather than just a local view shaft. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yep. So the recommendation makes it thus.
Yeah.
I've got Councillor Walker, then Councillor Brewer, and then I'm going to go to Councillor Darby. No, Walker's not. Walker is. Walker's back. Walker.
What an interest. Yeah, just got a few questions. First off, in terms of the view shaft itself, obviously you're taking it from a given point.
That's correct.
But does the view shaft protect not just the view from that point, but the transect? So I'm assuming there's a lot more at stake than just the view from that point, because there will be all the points along the view shaft that get the view.
Well, that's the case where a view shaft goes down a road. But where it immediately deviates off cross-country, across private properties to go to a monga, then that really isn't the case.
Why is that?
Because the views are strictly about public perception of the monga, and of course once you start to go out of the, in most cases, road corridor, you're immediately onto private property.
Yeah, but aren't you going to have roads and the like in the neighbourhood where you're also going to see the view along the transect?
Not very often. Just to be clear though, I think it's very easy to look at the view shafts in isolation and think that these are the only things protecting the cones and connections to them. The height sensitive areas also have an important role to play in this, insofar as they specifically address more local views and glimpses of the cones. So you can't ignore those. So there are two layers to this protective process. But no, the views are from specific locations, and except for the linear views, they are designed to really to protect the view from that particular point.
Okay. I mean, going back to the original legislation that the Auckland, I can't remember, it was the Auckland Regional Authority then put in place back in '76. I thought that the concern then was around that whole transect, not just the view from a given point. No.
No, it's not. But of course you end up protecting a
everything
large part
in between.
of it. That's right.
Sure, which is enjoyed by a lot of people.
That's right.
The other question I've got just goes to the point that you raise about the environment court and the existing environment and the like, but going wider than that, do we not have to take into account what's being put in place under the proposed unitary plan in terms of the density, the height that we're likely to see within that density, and what that does to the view shaft?
I'd probably talk to that from a planning perspective. So it all shoots back to section 32 in the RMA, where there is the balancing not just of the cultural values and the landscape values and so on, but also the economic costs and benefits, all required under a section 32 analysis. So all of those factors need to be taken into account, and looking at the impacts on what the zoning, for example, would otherwise be, or the heights, is all part of that, and that's a task that the panel essentially will have to grapple with, that overall balancing of the various aspects of section 32. So, but the way that the view shafts work is they do override the provisions that apply in the zone beneath them. So if the zone allowed 50-metre tall building, the view shaft essentially would put a restriction in place that wouldn't allow that 50-metre high building as of right.
So if we make the assumption that the unitary plan is successful and we have an uplift in housing density across all of Auckland, and that basically wipes out all sorts of other views that might exist right now, so all we're left with are these finite number of views. Surely those views become more significant, and if the trees are wiped out because they're no longer protected, because they're going to be replaced by houses, and that's inevitable in the unitary plan. Doesn't that change the context?
I think the context is already there, and we see it with some of the views, for instance, across Hobson Bay to both Mount Hobson, but more particularly Mount Eden. And you only have to look at the way in which the view shafts have already constrained development in Newmarket, and the way you've now got quite a flat platform of rooftops because of view shafts like E11, E12 and E13. And what's happened is now you're getting quite a clear differentiation of the cone from that urban development,
Which is good.
in front of it. And that's exactly what will happen throughout the rest of Auckland over time.
Okay. The other question I've got just goes to regionally significant. I mean, when I've visited some World Heritage places and there's something there, and obviously because it's World Heritage it attracts lots and lots of tourists, what you find, and I've had this, is you go on a tour and you go all around sometimes, part of the city to look at something from all different perspectives. And that includes going down local roads, sometimes going down alleyways so that you see something. The views are quite sometimes very narrow, but from a local perspective, a regional perspective, a national perspective, and an international perspective, that particular view is hugely significant. It's internationally significant. So that leads me to the question about a number of these locations that might be local, but if you're on the tour and that's the place where you're going to get it, surely it's much more than local?
Yeah, I mean, look, I completely understand what you're saying. The problem is that the criteria are not my creation. They are, in reality, the creation of a panel of experts. And there have been cases where I've had to accept that other viewpoints...
But you're a big shot in the...
Yeah, but I'm not the...
Councillor, I think we're starting to stray
Fine.
a little bit.
I'm trying not to stray.
Yep. Okay. I think if we go back to Councillor Lee, I think he summed it up perfectly. Sometimes to actually protect the very big bundle of view shafts we want to protect, we've had to go through this process. If the recommendation goes through, it's kind of status quo. So I think we're rather, I'm detecting, looking around whether people are wanting to get to the recommendation.
Absolutely.
So if we could move on.
That was a compliment, Steve.
I've got Councillor Philippaina and Councillor Brewer.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I'm really not going to canvass what has been said, but Stephen, I just want to say thank you, and obviously the group, but more importantly you, around the work that you have done around the view shafts. I also understand that leading into the mediation and the hearings and being reconvened on the 9th of May, will also at least give an opportunity for us to put a position in, or albeit the recommendation reconfirming the current position. But so I say thank you, and also to the others, and hopefully it will be supported wholeheartedly in regards to holding that position. Chair, I also just want to acknowledge the fact that as a result of discussions that I've had with you as the chair of this committee, but allowing the recommendation that Chris has put up there as the recommendation, I just want to acknowledge that in regards to a way forward. So, yeah, just wanted to say, hopefully this goes through for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Filipaina. Councillor Brewer.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make a couple of comments on two of these. Just on the Mount Eden prison view shaft, the comment's been made that buildings are often replaced with something equally high. And I suppose for this particular site, I want to challenge that notion, because I believe if you remove that volcanic view shaft, you're pretty much making a building just as high more likely. And I put it to you that in 2007, the Department of Corrections, led by the Department of Corrections, the Minister of Corrections at the time, Phil Goff, signed off on that building, and with the stroke of a pen, after a lot of debate as to whether Mount Eden Remand Prison should be expanded or should be relocated. And so I put it to you that that volcanic view shaft was hard fought for. It sits on a purple site there for future light industry. It's worth a lot of money in a commercial sense, and one day I believe a future government will probably move the remand facilities somewhere else in the region, and out will flourish a commercial precinct, and possibly mixed with residential of some sort. And won't we be pleased if that view shaft, which 300,000 cars pass every day, is retained and the developer has to work around it. So I just wanted to put that notion there, that particularly with a government site like that, and something that's been so controversial that sits on such valuable commercial land, that I believe this century that will disappear, and if we remove the volcanic view shaft, we also remove the opportunity for a future generation to see that view from that point. Secondly, just following up from what Councillor Mike Lee and Dick Quacks have well articulated, is the regional importance of the Rangitoto view shaft from St Heliers Bay Road, Madam Chair. Again, I know what the presenter said as far as that this, just because manga are of culturally significant and have huge national value, that the views aren't necessarily containing those significance. But I put it to you, and Councillor Quacks and I did a site tour via Google Earth this morning in my office along the high road from Newmarket down to St Heliers, and there's very few, and you can visualise this yourself, there's very few peaks that you get of Rangitoto, and none as commanding as when you get around there and the road turns from southwest, where it's been heading largely southeast to east northeast, and then all of a sudden Rangitoto arrives.
Rangi, it's not Rangi.
Oh, Rangitoto, thank you.
No, it's not Rangi.
Oh, Rangi.
It's
The
that
manga.
important,
I'll
at
talk
least
about
say
the.
it
I'll
properly.
talk about the manga. Thanks, Councillor Cooper.
At least say it
So
properly
that
if you
manga
think it's
is
important.
particularly special because, as we know, it emerged according to the Doc's website, and Councillor Cooper might have other information, but it emerged from the sea just 600 years ago. It is New Zealand's, not New Zealand. Councillor Cooper, New Zealand's. It is New Zealand, as the Eastern Bay's people would say. It is the youngest volcano in New Zealand, and so that is a very, very important regional, if not nationally important view of this island manga. So again, I support the speakers on that Rangitoto subject, and I also support Mark Thomas, the Ōrākei Local Board, the St Heliers Glendowie Association and the St Heliers Business Association have all had strong views. Comments have been made that anyone in St Heliers, most people have a view of Rangitoto. Well, increasingly we know that that's unlikely, and this certainly connects the community with the manga, and not just the local community, but the whole community of Auckland, and visitors who visit St Heliers, which is arguably the only seaside village in the isthmus, and the Tamaki Drive regional amenities. So I support that notion of it being retained as a regional importance.